So spring is just around the corner for many Canadians, but not for all that we we have right now. Marty up north, what's happening? I saw your video on Twitter talking about the weather. Holy cow. Now, I just got back from Japan. In Japan, it's like in the 20s right now. I came back to British Columbia home for myself for the time being anyway. Going, oh man, it's like 10 degrees colder here. And I'm like thinking I'm suffering. I saw you're shoveling your walkway.
My furnace hasn't stopped for 2 days. I mean, it stops, but it's not constant like it was back when it was minus 40. But the fact that the furnace is still going in mid-April is annoying. I'm not going to be the guy who goes and, well, maybe I should be the guy who puts his winter tires on or his summer tires. No, it's irrelevant. Like I mean, I haven't taken off my winters, and I'm not about to. And and despite all, so for the viewers right now outside, I got snow. My wife just came in. She's blown away by the drifts, and it's about -5. And then CTV, and I'll get back to why I'm listening to the CTV, but CTV's doing, they do the usual. They put the map of Alberta and they forecast the temperatures. And I was annoyed because they already have red on the maps. And then you look at it, go like, red, like, are we forecasting a heat wave? They're literally at the point, Clyde, where like 10 degrees or 15 degrees is now red, 5 is yellow, and colder than 5 is green. Remember the good old days? I mean, you didn't see red on the map unless there was like a massive heat wave. But like,
it's unreal too. And last year out here in British Columbia, I remember them saying like the hottest summer ever recorded. It wasn't at all. I mean, the previous summer before that, we got up to 46 degrees here, which is really hot. That's really hot. But last summer, they were droning on and on about record heat. I never took my hoodie off in the shop. And that was a thing. That was a thing because like most people are like, oh, you're boiling it, especially working in a garage. No, it was.
Well, cool. It was like the story. It's like what I told you last week, right? Where I'm listening to the radio and they're talking about the fact that Alberta hit a record in March. It was the second snowiest March on record. Now they've gotten smart. They know they say on record because, sorry, folks, but Alberta's been around for 4 billion years. Maybe not in this exact look, but to claim long-term temperature records or climate records, you got it. So they say on record. And we just smashed a record for March, but then the radio was like, yeah, it's a little more than usual. And I was like screaming at the radio. It's like, it's 3 times more than usual, but they can't, right? So, and by the way, because it's going to come up again. Yes, I have been listening to the CTV. Somebody might already have picked up on it. I mentioned CTV and somebody said, why are you listening to CTV? I have some family visiting. I'll be blunt. My father-in-law, my mother-in-law, they're back from Costa Rica and they're visiting here. And the first thing my father-in-law did when he got here is he turned on my TV. He's like, you don't have CTV. You don't have news. I'm like, no, I don't watch the news. So he downloaded the app on my TV. I wish he hadn't, but I don't blame him. He's back in Canada. He wants to know what's going on. And his source of what's going on is CTV. And then he leaves it running. Clyde, he leaves it running in the background all day long. And
it's like CNN at the airport.
It's a 1 hour. It's barely an hour, right? I can repeat the stories that I've heard all day, and they're going to be related. We're going to contrast some of the stories from today, like the budget and inflation, and I'll contrast with what CTV does. And like, folks, don't listen to mainstream media. It's garbage. It's just garbage.
It is garbage, and especially when they're getting so much money from this new budget. This is crazy. Seeing that the CBC is getting $42 million more in the budget after warnings of job cuts. Well, why are they cutting jobs? They just got bonuses. This is what's insane to me. They give themselves bonuses. They cut the workforce. They all this money is directly from the taxpayer. Just goes to their executives.
And some people are going to think that's nothing. So here's the story, right? So since 2018. CBC gets $1.2 billion a year. That's what they get. And some years it's more, and so in this year's budget, There's $1.2 billion for the CBC. Now it's buried. You don't see it as a line item for the CBC. It's just general operating expenses. CBC is a crown corporation, but it can't function entirely on its own, so it gets money from the government. If it was a good corporation, it wouldn't even need it would actually throw back money to the government, but this one is a crown corporation that sucks money out of the government. And yeah, late last year, people remember, the CBC said, "Oh, times are tough. We're losing money. We're going to have to lay off 10% of the workforce." Well, guess what, Catherine Tate? She's lucky. She pleaded with the government, and now she doesn't have to lay off anybody because her reward for being incompetent and unable to generate a profit and manage her affairs properly, she gets her 1.2 billion, and at the last second she gets an extra 42 billion, so that now she doesn't have to take tough decisions and fire anybody.
That's brutal.
That's
brutal.
Yeah, that's how that's the Canadian government, right? That's you are incompetence is expected and in fact rewarded.
What do you even say to that? What do you even say to that? And it's all on the taxpayer as well. As taxes are going up in this country, and as the affordability is going way up. I mean, the not the ability to afford things, but the prices of everything is going way up. Inflation, again, the numbers are coming in. I think that they're flubbed. I don't think we're at 2.9%. That's unbelievable numbers. And then,
well, and let's talk about that. So that was buried yesterday, right? So we'll get into the budget. The budget, but the first story out of the gate yesterday morning, totally overshadowed by the budget, was inflation. But of course, nobody's talked about inflation yesterday because it went back up. So the month or the year-over-year inflation rate for March is 2.9%. It had been 2.8%. And remember how the government was bragging like our measures are working, right? They ain't bragging now.
Yeah.
And it went up in 8 provinces. The only 3 provinces and territories that it went down in are the prairie ones. It went down in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta. Way to go, Manitoba. Apparently Manitoba's inflation is about 0.8%. So this is my sales pitch. Don't come to Alberta, folks. Go to Manitoba.
But hey, Marty,
or go to BC. It's prettier in BC. Yeah,
Marty, everybody's going to be able to afford things once they get their check from the government. The rebate, the climate rebate. That's the price on carbon. It's crazy. How many people in this audience, or yourself, myself, has anybody gotten this carbon tax rebate? I haven't. I don't even think anyone in British Columbia is eligible because we put the
you guys wouldn't get it in British Columbia because you're not part of the federal program. You have your own cap and trade carbon tax.
Well, it's a carbon tax on us, and we get no rebate. So
yeah, you get no rebate. But funny you'd ask that. The carbon rebate checks that apparently 8 out of 10 people get came out 2 days ago. I'm going to say Monday. And the government, remember, it was
8 out of 10 people.
A huge campaign.
8 out of 10 people are going to know this.
Huge campaign on the news. And then even like I listen to radio when I'm driving. I don't have much choice. So when I'm driving, I turn on the radio. And one of the radio talk shows, they is like, oh, okay, you guys are paid to talk about this. Everybody talked about the carbon rebate. They were trying to remind everybody to go look for it. It's such a like, and my daughter got it. Okay, my daughter got it. She got it, and she's like, what is this? You know, she gets a notification from her bank, and she's like, I got this thing called the EC something. So that was what they were talking about on the news. The government's trying to make sure that when the bank deposits it in your account, that it says carbon rebate or something super obvious. Because it's backfired. You know, they're trying to. Well, it just shows their desperation, right? They want like. It shows a couple of things. I'll say this. I am disappointed by my daughter and other Canadians. Like, I don't know, man. If the government puts money in my bank account, I usually try and figure out why, you know, like, but Canadians are so fiscally naive. I'm being nice. We don't do a good job of teaching finance and money management and things like that. I mean, how many Canadians? I remember when I was a kid, my mom would, you wrote checks and you had to do what was called like a reconciliation. My mom would look at the credit card statement and then cross-reference her little slips or whatever and make sure that nothing slipped through the cracks. I don't know how many Canadians do anything like that nowadays. They just tap, 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 and at the end of the month they get a credit card bill and they assume whatever, right? I mean, question everything, people, not just the government, but question the businesses you do business with, and that's just my thought.
No, it's absolutely correct. It's absolutely correct. My wife is the one that goes through every last statement and makes sure that everything is kosher, or I guess you would call it.
Yeah.
But it's true. Canadians don't look at their finances, and this is why I said, when people say, "Oh, if you could make a law, what would you do if you had the power to make some new law in Canada?" And I thought about this for a lot of years. What I would do is I would make it illegal for a third party to pay your taxes for you on your behalf. So every tax that you ever have to pay, you have to okay and sign it and hand over the money. This would change a lot of things fundamentally in Canada, because more people would be aware of what they're paying in taxes that are just going out of their pocket and into the government coffers. I think that would be a huge plus, because people would get mad. And the whole thing is people aren't getting mad because they don't know. These are all little, things that are built into products, or they're, built into your paycheck. They're built into everything. If people realize that they're giving the government over 60% of their paychecks every year,
well, and
crazy.
And so this week it was the government mad at Canadians for failing to recognize that they were being given money. That's kind of what I said. Like that's how I saw it. Like
giving
this
their
week,
money
the government's
back,
like,
their own money back.
We're giving them this carbon rebate and nobody even knows about it. God, it must, like, Gilbo is just getting mad. I'm giving you money and you don't know about it. And I wasn't going to help him by saying, by the way, Stephen, most people aren't even aware that you're giving them money because they're
unaware of the money you're taking away from. Yeah, that's exactly
right. Yeah, exactly. So let's go to the budget then. Let's talk we'll talk for a while on the budget here. So first of all, Freeland is disconnected. There's a tradition in Canada where the finance minister gets a new pair of shoes. So and in the past it was a photo op. The prime, and I don't know where this tradition comes from, but the Liberals, it's never a simple photo op. She was literally in some business, and these poor girls brought her like 40 pairs of shoes to look at. So Freeland took up an hour of somebody's time trying on different shoes and then gets a free pair of shoes. I mean, if somebody offered me a free pair of shoes, I wouldn't be trying 40 different pairs on. I'd be like, those look good. Thank you very much. But anyways, and then she delivers her speech, and some of the bold-faced claims that she made before she released numbers were hilarious. So at one point she literally said, she said, Canadians are hurting, young people in particular hurting, like appealing to emotions. And she's like, it would be irresponsible on our part to leave Canadians with debt, and our children and our grandchildren with debt. Like, I'm paraphrasing, but she almost said that. And I'm like, everybody, so that clip goes out. Everybody's like, is she mocking us? Is she really that blind? Like, and I'm like, okay, let's just attack it with facts. So I go into the budget. So she doesn't want to leave us debt. And I highlighted in the budget, there's a line at the bottom that shows this year's debt and future year's debt, and the debt's climbing. So, we're at $1.2 trillion in debt, and it goes up by, get this, folks, Canada's debt increased under the Liberals for the last 8 years by $220 million a day. That's not a typo. That's not a mistake. Our debt's increasing by $220 million a day. A day. Okay. A day, Clyde. A day.
That's crazy.
And so you look directly in the budget. She says that with a straight face, but year after year, the debt in the budget itself, in the exact document she just delivered, the debt goes up. And then she talks about the fall economic statement. She's like, in the fall economic statement, we gave ourselves a couple of goals, to not exceed this level of debt, to not exceed this level of debt to GDP and whatever. And Mr. Speaker, we're proud to announce that we met all our goals. So again, you turn to the budget and you look at it and go, well, no, you didn't. Like
No.
your debt to GDP ratio is 3%. I don't know. Your target last year was this. You said you were only going to be $40 billion in debt last year. You ended up the year $58 billion in debt. And somehow or other next year, you're forecasting to still only be not in debt. You forecasted a $40 billion deficit this year. You blew it out of the water. You finished the year at 58. And somehow or other, miraculously, next year, you're still only going to be $40 billion in deficit, even though between October and this month, in the last 5 months, you promised $111.3 billion in extra spending. So, like, their math doesn't make sense, and they tell you something that's not even.
Are they playing a game where it's like they make the announcement as if it's factual? The media put it out there, and then nobody checks the numbers, and like nobody looks at it, and nobody questions them.
Nobody looks, nobody questions. I don't even think Freeland knows what's in there. And some of the people, like, they're applauding like seals. Oh, bravo, bravo. And I'm like, either you're a complete idiot for applauding, or you don't know, or you're lying, or all of the above. Like, I mean, I don't think she read the budget because, you know, I read it. It's 430 pages long. And I'm thinking, in order for me to put together a budget, like when I used to put together budgets for my companies, it was an activity that would take about 2-3 weeks, you know, and we did, and there was like lots of sitting down and stuff like that. And I'm like, I think at this point in our government, it's so ginormous that I don't think Freeland even knows. Like, it's on autopilot. There's people just, you know, crunching numbers, putting together a big giant book, giving it to her. She reads a speech that has nothing to do with what's in the book. Like, it, you know. Well, you brought up an example, and do the media question it? No. Like, here's another statement that she made. She said, you know, housing, right? Mm-hmm. So she literally said, we're going to build, the government is embarking on a mission to build 4 million homes by the year 2031. I'm like, wow, 4 million homes. But then I do the quick back of the envelope math, man. That's 7 years times 365 days times 24 hours times 60 minutes. There's 4 million minutes between now and 2031. And we're going to build 4 million homes in 4 million minutes. So that's a home a minute.
A home a minute for the next few years.
Yeah. And then you go, is this even possible? So then you go to the data and you go, what's the most homes that Canada's ever built in a given year? It's 240,000. Mm-hmm. So, you know, in 7 years, that would be 1.75 million homes. So they're going to double the number of homes we build in the next 7 years, even though the average construction worker is age 55 and approaching retirement, even though we're letting in immigrants during the whole time, even though we don't have the materials, even though blah, 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 right? So it's a bold-faced, impossible achievement. And then the beauty of it is, like, they're going to spend whatever, you know, $80 billion to do that. And you go, $80 billion divided by 4 million bucks, that's, or 4 million homes, that's like, you know, that's $20,000 a home. So you're budgeting $20,000 a home. Okay. What do we build? What are we building?
Yeah.
But then that's how liberals play the game, right? We're not, what's a home? I don't know. It could be a trailer.
So I talked about this yesterday, and this is Naya Fannerstill. She had a really good thread about this, talking about how Sean Fraser's housing fantasy is that it's a fantasy. There's 4 million homes in 7 years. And she breaks it down, not talking about specifically the money allotted for it, even though, you know, what did you break it down? $90 or $90,000 a home? Something like that.
20,000 a home or whatever. Yeah.
But even by those stats, we actually need 6 million homes by 2030. So it's not even enough. But that being said, Canada normally builds about 225,000 housing units every year. This is plus or minus the maximum production yield of the total construction.
That's where I said the 240 came from.
Yeah.
240 was our record in 1 year. 240. Yeah.
So our average is that. So there's no way our builders are going to build that many homes. Not to mention, we're going to lose about 20% of those workers over the next decade. We're going to lose them. And there's not a huge increase of people getting into the trades. And this is the thing. They're actually calling for an 83% increase in the construction worker trade. And that's just not happening. And it doesn't matter the amount of, opening up of immigration that you're going to get. These aren't like unskilled laborers. We're talking about people.
No, and
you have to go through like a 5-year apprenticeship to be able to do these jobs. It's crazy.
Yeah. And I mean that's laborers. The government will do the same thing. Oh, we're dedicating 200,000 or 200 million to hire 50,000 new police officers and 20,000 new nurses and blah blah. They throw numbers like that all the time that they're completely unable to achieve and aren't vetted. They're just not vetted, right? Do they make sense? They're not vetted.
But Marty, what does this look like long term? Because like I'm serious. I have to look at this right now. And given my situation, I'm in a conundrum. I'm in a pickle, right?
I pulled a pin this week, and I gave my daughter assistance. I gave my daughter money to help her make a down payment. We were thinking about it, and I'm like, you got to buy a house or a condo. You got to get into the market because prices are. I have to believe in my ability to forecast and then analyze data and. The supply and demand, the real supply and demand is not going to get fixed, right? The real supply and demand for housing is more houses, and playing with the demand side by increasing the price or increasing interest rates or those things, that's artificial and it's not going to work. So there's only one way to adjust this, and it's to build more houses, but we can't do it. So then the other way is to reduce the number of buyers and limit the freaking number of immigrants coming into the country. Sorry, folks. I love immigrants. It's a country based on immigration.
They're not going to do that.
We can't let 1 million in. There was no talk about, in the budget, there was no talk about immigration. And there's actually zero talk about, well, there was a wee bit talk about increasing productivity of Canadians. But you know what she said?
We're not productive enough. Okay, thanks.
We're not productive. Our productivity is decreasing, right? And so people complain about this.
I mean, the trades workers are producing. They're producing what they can.
Sure. No. I'm talking broadly speaking as a nation.
Of course.
Productivity as measured as in terms of
the way that comes across.
Real GDP.
The way that comes across when they're talking about house building, and then they say we're just not being productive enough. I mean, the average skilled laborer looks at that and says, all right, well, you build the damn houses, you know what I mean?
No,
and then they want to throw their arms up there and say, you know what, I'm out of here. And that's what's happening. It's what's happening. I mean, like I said, with my situation, I'm losing my rental property. I can't afford to buy a house, buy into this market. Are you kidding me? Like where I live, you're talking like even a townhouse is $1 million. Like what's the down payment on that? And
we shared pictures last week. You showed me the pictures. I mean, that was part of what. Yeah,
it's ridiculous, and it's a situation where you got to pick up and move. You got to get uproot your stuff and get out of town. And a lot of people are unfortunate, and they have to move to another city that's just going to be expensive. I'm looking at it like I'm a dual citizen. I'm probably going to cross that border, and I'm going to be taking my skills and everything with me. Like that's really what it comes down to.
You wouldn't be wrong. I mean that this government is not friendly to its citizen. That's black and white.
It's exacerbating the whole situation, though. Like the more skilled laborers people get out of here, the worse off it's going to be.
Well, in the budget, fairness for all generations. So that was the theme of the budget, right? Fairness for all generations, which, by the way, again, Marty, the pragmatic goes, well, if this is the first budget that's fair for all generations, what were the previous ones?
They're all unfair for generations.
They're all unfair. I mean, you chose the words. I didn't choose them.
Yeah.
And when they first announced that, I honestly thought, ooh, this is going to hurt for the baby boomers, because yes, the focus lately is the younger Canadians, the millennials and the Gen Zs who are facing a hard start to their lives. And again, Freeland, it keeps addressing that. It's like you keep addressing that, but you don't address any of the problems. The problems of these kids are all yours, right? And she's not addressing the problems like immigration. She's not addressing the broad decrease in productivity of Canadians. When I say that, I'm talking about our GDP. Like, the fact that we're not opening our minds and don't have a shipbuilding industry and are shifting manufacturing to all other countries and not exploiting our lumber properly and our oil, that's leading to a decrease in GDP. She didn't address that. And what do? They go for taxes. So yesterday, I thought they were going to start really thinking about, taxing the sale of residential. They were going to start taxing the gains on the sale of primary residences. I also thought they were going to start touching something on RSPs and retirement age, and perhaps a death tax or a formal estate tax or something like that, because we know that the boomers have a lot of money accumulated, and the liberals, they're going to have a hard time keeping their hands off that money. But they kept them off yesterday because boomers are still one of their biggest demographics. It's still one of the demographics that supports them. We talked about this, right? The 30-year and under are disenfranchised. They are discouraged. So what did they do yesterday? They decided to tax the ultra rich. It's a measure that won't affect very many people, but it is fundamentally counterintuitive. Like you keep attacking the ultra rich, the business people, the guys like you, the guys like me, the engineers, the real producers.
But is it really the ultra rich though? Because like this is the thing that most people don't realize when they hear statistics. They hear statistics about the poor classes, and they talk about these people as if they're as if these people are always the same people. You say people who have low income, and then down the road you refer to them again as if they're the same people. It's these classes are not static; they're transient. People who are low income a few years ago become middle class. Income. You sell a home and you're one of the 1% that year. You're no longer middle class the year that you sell a home, and then you're middle class again the next year. You might be low income as a business owner. Somebody owns a business, but on the books, it's so crazy how transient these people are. They're not a static class of individuals, and yet they'll look at that and they'll say it's not fair for the low income, so we're gonna have to go after the higher income. And it depends on where you are in your life, and you might just get nabbed big time just because you sold a house and you're just trying to go here to maybe upgrade your life a little bit, incrementally, or sell some capital so that you could buy a business and then make money for your life. Nope, that's not going to work out for you. There's so many people that are getting screwed over by these rules that are supposed to go after, the big bad rich people, and it's not going after the big bad rich people. Those people have loopholes that they'll find their way out of the stuff. It's always just people who incidentally found themselves into some money. They're getting screwed out of it.
In the end, there was no tax increase yesterday. I mean, what they said is we'll increase the portion of capital gains that are taxed. And so right now, if you're rich, if you have more than $10 million in capital gains somehow, you sold a business or something, 50% of those gains are taxable. Now it'll be 66%. But it's still a bad measure, right? It's an insignificant measure. It's one that doesn't accomplish very much, but it's all negative because it won't generate money. In fact, it'll probably create less because you just send a bad signal to people who want to take risk. And she even mentions that. She's like, we got to be careful. We don't want to discourage entrepreneurs. I'm like, well, you are discouraging entrepreneurs.
You've absolutely done
that's
that.
Exactly. Yeah. So not and again, not a lot of increases in taxes, thank God, but definitely a ton of increase in spending. I think the deficit, the real deficit at the end of this year will be in the $80-90 billion. And one measure, Clyde, one measure. She literally said in the House of Commons that we're going to reduce the civil service. I'm like, oh, this ought to be good. They're going to reduce the civil service over the next 4 years through normal attrition, meaning if somebody resigns or retires, we won't replace them. And she said it with a straight face in the House of Commons, which should result in about 5,000 less civil servants in the next 4 years. I'm like, ooh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
I love the
Wow.
fact that she admitted that that's a problem. The number of civil
Yeah.
servants is a problem in Canada. But well, we're gonna do it not by firing people, but through the natural
No.
attrition of these jobs. Well, you know what else is a
Yeah.
natural attrition is when we don't have money to pay them. This is my big thing that I just have to keep reminding people. You have any idea the road we're going down by spending this kind of money? We're not going to get to the point where,
Well,
oh, oops, we kind of went over our budget. Let's just crack down and stop on. No, they're going to have to lay off tons of people when the government figures out that they can't pay them.
well, throughout the budget, they keep increasing. So I'll give you another example. So throughout the budget, they keep increasing spending. So one of the categories in there is that, again, they announced that they're going to spend, don't quote me exactly, but I think it was $37 million to buy back banned firearms, right? 3-year program. They haven't bought back anything yet. But so every year they say we're going to announce, we're going to spend 37 million. And then you read the fine print. It says that it's not going to come from any increase. It's going to come, the 37 million will come from opportunities. So that means that the RCMP has to reduce its spending by $37 million to make sure they can do the buyback. Two things. A, if it did happen, it's bullshit. It's bad policy, right? So what are you going to do? Take off 500 officers off the streets in order to buy back firearms? Like, that's bullshit, right? It's not going to happen. So it looks good on paper. It doesn't even look good on paper. And it's just paper because it's not going to happen. The RCMP is not going to reduce their expenditure by 37, and we will end up spending 37 million. And we won't buy back a single firearm because the money will go to GC Strategies or some outfit, and we'll come back and talk to those guys. But
yeah,
and it's just, I mean, I think we'll get off this topic, but I just want to bring up a couple of other silly ones, right? The government yesterday, again, you read in the budget, one of the ways, Freeland says, one of the ways the government can help is by freeing up more land because the government is the biggest owner of land. Okay, that's fair. Fine. Free up some land that we can put buildings on or whatever. In the budget, they talk about freeing up land that's currently owned by Canada Post. And they list 1,700 parcels of land in different cities where the government can now let that land go and you could put a house. So I was laughing. Our friend 222.
yeah.
I'm like, buddy, you're lucky, man. You live in Crossfield. Apparently Crossfield has a shitty little post office that's no longer useful, and the government's going to free up that land so you guys can put a house on it.
One house, right on. Wow, of all that crown land that's available, especially out here in British Columbia. Holy cow, they're gonna let up that. Oh man, what even?
Can we talk about halal?
I want to talk.
Can we talk about housing? Let's talk about halal meat.
I actually have this queued up because this is crazy. The federal government to begin exploring halal mortgages. Now, what does this mean? What does this actually mean? So for people who don't know, in Islamic law, we're talking Sharia law here, they view lending money and then having to pay it back with interest as usury. Now, this isn't the first religion to look at it like that, but the Islamic religion has been strict about it because it's written in their book, and it's not. The Islamic religion is laid out like a set of laws, right, in their book, and they're strict about the usury thing. You're not allowed to, charge interest to another person. This has become a problem in other countries. This isn't new to the Islamic world. In fact, Turkey has had a lot of problems because of this, and they had a religious leader who was very strict on this principle. Now, going back a few years, I mean, look at this news article here. This is from back in 2021, not even that long ago. Lira plunges again after, I don't even know how to pronounce the guy's name, Erdogan, cites Islam to defend rate cuts. So what he was doing is he was keeping interest rates very low in Turkey because he saw it as a religious issue and not a geopolitical issue or a currency issue or anything like that. Well, fast forward a little bit of time, Turkey, the lira falls as Erdogan cites Islam on monetary policy. This is, December of that same year. And then all the way to now, Turkey hikes interest rates again to 45% after interest rates near 65%. This is the result of these policies. I know you can have like Sharia law and stuff like that in countries where you're oil rich, and basically you don't have to worry about that stuff. But in other countries where you're not, these policies don't take very well. Now I'm gonna say, like, now they're considering halal mortgages for Muslims in Canada as some way of. My thought is to try to buy the Muslim vote back, because they've
for sure. But and look at the, just right there, it says, the Sharia law prevents Muslims from charging or receiving interest. So on a smaller purchase, like let's say a car, if you bought a $10,000 car and I was going to charge you $500 in interest, what they do to get around their law or to be compliant is they move the interest up to the capital line, and they say, I bought a car for $10,500 and then I pay zero interest. They play bullshit games like that.
Yes. Or fees. And they add fees onto it.
Or fees or whatever. And that's what they're going to do for. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I've said this on Twitter and places like that. I really don't give a shit what deal a bank does with its own client. I guess the bank has to operate within a certain set of rules, but why does this have to be like highlighted in the government's budget? Like it's highlighted because the government's going to spend, it's pandering, and they're going to spend like $10 million studying the problem. A problem that's been solved. Like you said, there are Muslim countries, there are places around the world that already know how to lend money to somebody who claims to be a devout Muslim. So it's pandering, and it's unnecessary. It's an unnecessary study. But I mean, the joke online was, are we going to have kosher budgets now, or kosher? I want a vegan. By the way, I want a vegan. No, I want a meat eater. I want an all meat mortgage.
You want the lion diet mortgage?
Yeah.
Well,
everybody was laughing that they're going to identify as, right? I'm going to, if the bank gives a zero interest loan, sure, I'll self-identify as a Muslim.
Well, so the reality of the situation is that we've had halal mortgages in Canada for a long time. It's in fact, Islamic financial institutions offer unique mortgage products that avoid conventional interest payments. So like you just said, they sell it in a different way so that they can get around calling it an interest payment, so that it's not against somebody's religion to pay these things. And this is not the main mortgage lenders in Canada, but these are other mortgage lenders that are happy to make that statement and say it differently. Now, this really gets down to a problem in economics it took forever to solve, right? The idea of what interest payments were. For the longest time, people saw it as usury, to lend people money and then ask for more money back afterwards. They say, that's unfair, blah, blah, blah. We couldn't understand it. In fact, we even Jewish religious people and Christian religious people, they kind of walked away from it even before they understood it, and just kind of accepted a bit of usury. And there still were, over the years, usury laws where you couldn't go charging exorbitant interest rates, and they would consider that usury if it was like over what a standard would be. And this was before they understood it. And it wasn't until actually Ludwig von Mises, the founder of Austrian economics, who explained what interest was and how that there's an actual market principle behind it, and he calls it the time preference. You'd rather have it now and consume it today than have it in the future after saving up the money to get it. And somebody else will, other people are happy to lend out the money, and that creates a supply and demand curve, which you can actually judge where the interest rate should be in a marketplace.
I'm smiling because who's the author?
Ludwig von Mises.
Oh, did you see that clip this week of the MMA fighter who won, and while he was talking to Joe, he said to some, like, you need to read this book, and if it wasn't that book, it was a book like that. You got to find that clip, man.
What is that? UFC fighter.
It's MMA fighter, UFC. I had it on my stream. It's hilarious. It's like one of the weirdest things ever. Weirdest endorsements for economic book by an MMA fighter who's all bloody. Let me keep talking while you.
I got it.
You got it?
I got it right here.
Play it.
Oh,
play that real quick. This is hilarious. Yeah. This is.
I love the First Amendment. I want to carry and own fucking guns. I love it. Property. And let me tell you something. If you care about your fucking country, I'll read Ludwig von Mises and the 6 lessons of the Austrian economic school, motherfuckers.
I love it.
Dude, okay, to the viewers, we did not prep this ahead of time. I just remembered that clip, and I was almost positive that he mentioned Wow.
Yeah, wow. Ludwig von Mises.
Isn't that cool, though? What an endorsement that is.
Well, absolutely. And this is the thing, like, so for people from they call it the Austrian School of Economics because Mises was from Austria. Now, F.A. Hayek, you may have heard his name. He was a student of Mises. He ended up becoming a Nobel Prize winner because of his work in economics, and was often cited by people like Thomas Sowell and Milton Friedman, who are incidentally of the Chicago School of Economics. So there's the Chicago School and the Austrian School, and they quite follow each other largely, but. Most economics that's taught in schools today is of the John Maynard Keynes variety, and he was the one who advocated, deficit spending and this macro theory versus micro theory. And the Austrian school largely dismisses that and says, no, this is you can apply micro theory to large economies and to grand scales. And this is really interesting. And a lot of like things that were not understood were really put into focus when Mises came around. So I love this. I'm a huge fan.
No, I love. And now you're also reminding me of something else that we witnessed this week. So like we said at the start of the show, there was the Bank of basically the Bank of Canada announced last week that they kept their interest rate at 5%. And then this week, they're kind of the custodians of the basket of goods. So they're the ones who announced inflation and said it was 2.9%. Mm-hmm. And then you see all the speeches that Tiff Macklin and the deputy directors and all of them, you can tell that they're in a dilemma because they know what's going on and they know what needs to be done. And they're smart people. And then you saw this week our government, and it's apparent, like for our economy to work well, yeah, the central bank has to work with the government and also has to work with industry. Central bank, these two big bodies can't ignore industry. And in our country, we also can't ignore the fact that we're next door to this giant economy called the US. I wish we weren't, but we are. And so we have to keep an eye on them, right? We can't operate in a complete vacuum.
Well, they need to keep an eye on us.
Sure, we all do. And so this week it dawned on me, I'm like, they're not even talking to each other, it seems like. And now it's there's some real problems that if they don't talk and don't address them, they're going to get worse. As an example, like I'm sure the Bank of Canada, since the last couple of years has had to offer, like, the government's out of control borrowing. And who's it borrowing from? The Bank of Canada. So the Bank of Canada keeps lending them money. And then the Bank of Canada at the same time has an economy that's highly inflationary. So it has to try and cool that economy. So it's offering bonds at a certain interest rate. Mm-hmm. But then the interest rate is stalled, not going high enough. And then as these bonds come due, the Bank of Canada is losing money on the bonds because it's unable to keep increasing interest rates because the government on the other side isn't giving it the confidence to do it and isn't stopping whatever. You know what I mean? So we got several parts like this week. Some of this to me became really clear, and I became nervous. And Canadians are waking up right now. Canadians are finally waking up. I mean, the budget was a fiasco for the Liberals. They got no good publicity out of it from any respectable outlet. Not Bloomberg, not business, not mayors. I didn't hear a single person say anything nice about the budget. Even Jagmeet had nothing nice to say about it, although I still think he's going to vote for it next week. We'll see what happens. Yeah.
But they're unafraid. This is the problem. The government of Canada is unafraid to just keep spending, despite all of the economic signals that are saying cut spending, stop the increases on the spending. Like it really is insane that the Canadian government today, with Trudeau's government, Chrystia Freeland, can get up and say, we're going to spend more money. We're going to get up and we're going to spend more money on stuff.
They use the words, we're fiscally responsible. Those were her exact words. We're fiscally responsible.
Now, if you want to steel man their argument, what you can say, though, is that they're led astray by poor economic theory. And this is where it gets into, Ludwig von Mises versus John Maynard Keynes, and
you're giving Trudeau way too much benefit of the doubt. It is too much benefit
of the doubt. But what it is they're using that as an excuse, and they have been for decades. A lot of liberal policy, fiscal policy, comes from the ability to use this really bad economic theory as an excuse to do what they've always wanted to do and just blow people's money with large, right? It really is crazy. But we're coming to a time in world history where this is coming to an end. Like not even just Canada, but like European countries, the United States, they're gonna have to really tighten the belt because they can't keep doing this.
There was a huge attempt in the House of Commons today to bring this to an end, right? Which let's talk about this story that happened. You're fully aware of the Arrive scam story, right? Mm-hmm. Of what's his name, Firth,
Christian Firth.
Christian Firth, right? Well, today was the day Christian Firth got dragged in front of the House of Commons. He what do they call it, being brought behind the bar. And we're trying to get answers from him, because this one, I'm glad that this one's not going away. This one's starting, finally this one is starting to, people are going like, listen, this guy is wasted a shit ton of money and we're not getting any value for the money. But look at how this even started today. I mean, this was again, it starts as a gong show. Slick. He tried to play play it.
Mr. Firth.
Mr. Speaker, yes, I am. I'm supposed to not participate in any activity that would cause any undue stress to myself, as being diagnosed with having acute mental health flare-ups, actively under therapy, and also on medication.
He's
a victim, Marty. He's a victim.
He can't testify. He can't testify because miraculously, the speaker would have none of it, and so he had to stay there and take it, and it was a beating. I mean, he got asked like finally, right? I mean, Larry Brock and Garnet Gruce and some lovely lady MP from Quebec, God bless her heart, I can't remember what her name, but they got to ask the questions, and he had to answer. And so, and often he turned to Mr. Speaker like, do I have to answer? And Mr. Speaker would say, yes, you have to answer. The guy is still a masterful at answering the question. He's the man famous for saying, when asked, like, did you go to the Prime Minister's cottage? He's like, no, I didn't go to the Prime Minister's cottage. And then somebody said, well, here's a document that says you went to the Rideau Hall, and then or whatever it's called. And he's like, oh, a chalet. Yes, I went to the Prime Minister's chalet. You asked me if I went to his cottage. No, I didn't go to his cottage. I went to his chalet. He answered like that today. Folks, go watch it. It's a bit nauseating, but at the same time, it is it's impressive because he gave answers that I would have expected if they had been asked by liberals. He was asked tough questions from conservatives and the Bloc, and he still gave those kinds of very, very, very factual answers. Did you meet with employees of the government of Canada? And he's like, they weren't employees at the time. They were blah, blah. He'd find the right word to squirm out of the question.
Where do you think this is going, though? Like Is he going to weasel his way out of it? Are there going to be actual criminal charges that go to anybody in this case? Now, what this has really done?
It gives further evidence that like we've all, the conservatives have asked for and gotten the RCMP to investigate, and he's been refusing to provide evidence. So this could put him in contempt of Parliament. It could lead to something. I mean, it's definitely more severe than just ignoring questions in the committee. He couldn't quite ignore. And the beauty, like people said, like I said, he kept turning to the speaker. Do I have to answer? So Brock,
Larry Brock,
Larry Brock. Larry's very good at asking. Like this is the time where you could ask a question and he had to answer it. So I was surprised. Like Elizabeth May said, do you have any remorse? And he turned to the speaker. Do I have to answer the question? And they said yes. And I was surprised he didn't weasel out of it. He said no. It's like, okay, fine, but you're on the record as having no remorse. I mean, and so he got nailed with questions like that where he answered them, and even answering them factually and weaseling his way out. He looked like a crook answering the question.
Yeah.
So I think this will lead to something. This one's going to be hard for the speaker. Looked uncomfortable. I'll tell you that. The speaker looked uncomfortable because the Liberals didn't want to ask questions, and the speaker was bound. Good job to the speaker, actually. Good job. He did his job. He found it hard, but he did his job. Yeah.
I don't even know what to make of the whole situation. People want heads to roll in cases like this. This is what's crazy about it, though, is it's not that this in particular case was any more egregious than anything that's happening at any level of government. All that this has done is it's blown the lid on the fact that this happens everywhere in government. This is like even in provincial governments where we're seeing this with the whole scandal with Edison Motors right now.
I thought of Edison Motors when he was answering. I'll give you yes. Finish your thought, but I'll give you my thought too. Go for it.
Not to say that anything's wrong with Edison Motors; they're doing a fine job, but they wanted to get a grant, and then it turns out that you won't get granted the grant if you don't use the company to help you write the form for getting the grant, which they take exorbitant fees for to write your grant. And then they'll also take 20% of all the grant money. Incidentally, they're the ones who do the granting of the grant. They help you write it.
They're the grantor and the grantee. Yeah,
it's insane. Yeah. It's insane. And this is what's happening at every level of government. And it doesn't matter where we end up looking. We keep finding this stuff everywhere we look.
So in his deposition today or interrogation, there was a fabulous MP from Quebec who when she was asking him questions, I kept thinking of Edison, because in that moment it became apparent that GC Strategies was acting like MNP. They were acting as they're so powerful and so well entrenched in Ottawa that they can block others and help others. And one of their job is purely to help other people get contracts, and they choose who gets contracts and who doesn't. And so this MP brought that up, that she was aware, she's been made aware since, and that's the beauty of this. So this is what's happening now. So little outfits like Edison Motors in Quebec and other places are now calling their MPs, Larry Brock and them, and saying, hey, I got a story for you. I tried to get a government contract and GC Strategies blocked me, and went further. We're learning that GC Strategies would muscle people or be nice to them and offer a cut and whatnot. And that lady said that, like, you made $86,000, she says, and she shows the evidence or whatever. You made $86,000 for what? For making a phone call? Do you feel that Canadians got value for your services? And the guy goes, yeah. So, okay, perfect. And she's all happy. She's like, so you're not even denying that you made $86,000? Perfect. Good enough. That's how you win these things. Yeah, that guy has no shame, man. No shame.
That's
no
crazy.
Shame. You know how much he's paid when he does work for the government? He's paid $2,600 an hour.
$2,600 an hour.
Firth is paid $2,600 an hour.
That's unreal.
That's his rate. That's unreal. That's complete like. And then Jagmeet Singh will go after Waylon or Galen Weston, who hires 220,000 people and makes $300 million in profit. And Firth hires him and another buddy, and they made $250 million in profit.
And he's got no problem with that. Yeah, I got no problem with that.
Where's your outrage, Jagmeet? Like, I'm talking to you, buddy. Where's your outrage?
And that's right on the taxpayers' dole too. Like, this is it's so crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
We could go on for another
Welcome
hour,
back.
Marty. We could, but I want to keep this under the hour mark.
Yeah.
So,
okay,
absolutely.
And you're jet lagged. I take it you're jet lagged.
I had a nap right before this, just 'cause I had to.
Okay,
it's crazy. The jet lag is insane coming back from Japan, and I don't know. It's for me. It's always when you travel east, the jet lag's bad. When you travel west, the jet lag's no problem.
Plus, you cross the time zone, right? Or is the dayline on the other side of Japan or this side of Japan?
It's so weird thing. Let me explain it to you. When you come back from when we come back from Japan, it takes a lot of hours to come back. But the weird part is we get home exactly the time that we left on the same day.
Right. So you're going backwards in time kind of thing. That's cool.
It's weird. It takes like 16 hours to get home, but you
have young children. Explain that to your kids. I remember traveling in the good old days and the kids didn't understand it when they'd be like, I'd be talking to them on the phone and it'd be like, what do you mean it's tomorrow there, Dad? I'm like, well, I'll explain it to you when you're older.
That's always a good excuse. I'm going to use that one. I'm going to use that.
Yeah.
All right, Marty, where can people find you?
Marty Up North on Twitter, man. That's where you want to find me. I'm also on YouTube, but everybody knows. Find me on Twitter. Come share thoughts, man. I love interacting with people. It's such an instantaneous feedback. Come let me know your thoughts on the budget.
Awesome. Well, we'll definitely have that. And always leave comments in the comment section down below. And we'll see you guys all in the next one. Keep on trucking.
Cheers, everyone.